the start of this attack and the main move you have to remember here, even though the computer fish might tell you to go there or other games, and there's perfectly fine, but the start of this attack, or personally my attack, every game I've played, and every game I think I'm going to show you where there's long castles tonight, we end up in the same position. That's a short castle game. This is an Italian FM, a retired Italian FM who's currently playing, if you want to check out his stats while we're there. And you'll see this position appearing quite a lot in all of the games. So we have an American NM here, we have an Italian FM in the waiting on the other side, and we all know what's going to happen here. Queen B5. This is the move to remember. Queen B5 is the start of the whole attack, okay? Queen B5, and we're starting to create problems. And from a black pieces player perspective, that's an extremely worrying looking move. Now everything's starting to look a bit tender. Now their eyes are drawn towards their king side, and their mindset will go towards dealing with this problem. Queen B5 does feel like a problem to the majority of chess players, and one of the main responses is going to be this. And at all given times, playing this is pretty much a blunder, as I was discussing yesterday. So in this position, the expected moves you might find are this, or this, followed by this, or simply maybe something like this, or this. But realistically, our plan's always going to remain the same. We want to drop our queen back to a4, and we're going to simultaneously threaten this bishop with check, and to capture this pawn. Alright? This is the little riddle that you're going to set your opponent as the black pieces whenever you get into this position. Regardless of what they play next, the move is effectively always the same. Alright? So just to prove a point, people like these warm, fuzzy feelings they get when they see these numbers, don't they? So in that line, that's the correct move. In this line, correct move. Yeah, you're going to be getting those sorts of variations a lot. In this game, we got queen here, which was quite nice. It's a different sort of thing, but we're always going to start thinking about chopping off pawns on this side. We've got a lot of juice. We've got a lot of power coming in. We cover a lot of squares. This guy's quite naked. Can you see the power of this position suddenly developing as we're just creating 1, 2 little queen moves? We're suddenly actually joining all of our pieces together in places where we want them. Alright? So, queen a4, queen b5, queen a4. That's the sequence that you're looking for in this attack. Okay, we have the king move. Again, if you see this pawn come, what do you think the ideas are here straight away? Like I've said to you, we're chopping. We're chopping that. If the king hasn't moved at some point, if the queen isn't there as well, if you get this and that comes, you can chop it off and think about recollecting the knight, can't you? Yeah? So, he thinks this is the solution. I'm going to tuck my queen in, and I'm going to move my king that way, and that solves everything. Everything's nice here, life's good. Okay? Starting to look a little bit scarier for the NM. Now I've got a bishop in the attack. We'll try and turn the amazingly high numbers off for now. And I do get it ever so slightly wrong in a second, but always winning. So here I play the very normal looking move, okay? And I've turned the numbers off here for a reason. Anyone that's still here, it's white to move and find a brilliancy. And I've played this line before. It's a lot trickier than you think in the endgame if you can see the line. But with best play, there is a better move here than recapturing the bishop. If anyone viewing wants to have a go, or if anyone at home that watches this later wants to pause the video, now would be the time to pause the video. White to move and win. Alright? So in this position, I played pawn takes, which is perfectly natural and normal, and still perfectly winning. We're perfectly fine here. However, if you found bishop takes here, this is stronger. The one problem with this is black can actually give up the queen, yeah? If they move, they're in a world of hurt, aren't they? And everything is going to be absolutely terrible. If they move, we're just going to chop everything. And that still can't move. Everything's a problem. The king's pinned in. If they go that way, which they won't, by the way, but it's always worth discussing. Apparently you just take the bishop as well. Don't get overexcited, and don't ever allow this piece to come back. Nothing can actually move, and if he ever does decide to capture that, you eat the queen. This is the problem with this tactic. If you do eat it and they do decide to give up the queen, this is actually a bit trickier than you think to convert. So by the time you've got to this sort of position, I know it's completely winning, but if you're not used to playing these sorts of positions where you are actually a full piece down but up a queen exchange, you might lose this position, and it feels embarrassing to lose these sorts of positions. So you have simplified quite a lot. Your versus 2 rooks here, unless you can get an attack going, this fizzles out quite quickly. If you're under about 1600, this is incredibly tricky to play. Regardless of this number, from a practical perspective, you need to practice this if you're willing to go into this position from this tactic, okay? I highly recommend you don't learn up to here and then just think I'm completely winning, because from, like I say, a practical perspective, if you pull this off against a master, you're going to need to be able to convert this position. So convert it against the fish on at least level 6, and then get the main ideas on how to move forward from this position if you prefer this position. So if you don't mind just capturing back, regardless of what a number says, this is still practically very difficult for black to find a good move, and as we find out, because the game finished incredibly quickly. So the blunder we've been hoping for the whole time, we finally see it. We're always hoping for this move to be played in this line, because from that point onwards we're just winning as white. Takes, always takes. Pretty much every time you see that, unless you've got something else going on, you can take it. Alright? So we're coming in now, and we've got real juice in the position. The fact that the queen came back to here at some point allows all this to be a problem, and all this to be possible. If this knight moves at any given time, check, only move, that's mate, isn't it? Because we cover all the relative escape squares. So that's always going to be a threat. This looks like it's coming in hot, doesn't it? How do you stop it? How does black get the pieces out quick enough? So he comes up with an idea. He tries to expect this to come and to be able to do something about it. Naturally, I can't land there yet, but can I? The only problem with that would be I'd need to waste a tempi capturing back, and by that time things could happen. So rook comes in, and he thinks this is an ingenious way of defending it. Now if you look at these pieces, they're still terrible, they still can't get out. So this guy is suffering, this number's shot up. There isn't really a better plan. From a human perspective, trying to find the correct move here, d5, is difficult. To this day, don't think I've seen anyone actually find that move, but for those lucky viewers here, you can. It looks like it doesn't work, but it does. And it's still completely winning for white, but any other move, literally any other move, trying to reshuffle the pieces and get them out, is completely losing. It doesn't help black in any way, shape or form, and all they think about in this position is if I move that knight, I'm getting mated. So in lower time control games especially, it's extremely difficult for people to just try and untangle the riddle and play d5. Alright? If you go into this specific line, it's going to be worth knowing what to do when they do play d5. Queen b5 check first. King c8 best move. If they go this way, I think it's a bigger problem. Not that bad. Computer will naturally make you repeat because it's a computer. Yeah. Right, but from a practical perspective, you are going to continue this as well, aren't you? There are other avenues in, and it's going to be incredibly scary and difficult to stop. You can start thinking about trading pieces off. You can just start simply bringing other pieces in. You can just give that up if you really want. Just make sure your queen's not in the way by the time you do. And the point of me saying all this is, by the time everything fizzles out, this number eventually starts shooting up again. It starts preferring white. The reason being, these pawns are incredibly quick. And once it starts becoming more simplified, the computer puts together that one of these pawns is not stoppable. One of them is going to make it. So by the time you've finished with this whole attack, as I'll prove in a later game as well, once you've finished with this whole attack, by the time you want to simplify, even if you're, say, down in exchange, but you've got these 4 passed pawns, you're flying. You're absolutely flying. You can't fail. Alright? So quick review. Queen e2 is an option, but only if you don't mind trading queens. You can transpose into this position by playing the knight out first. And if you get this, you're absolutely laughing. What you're hoping for here is castles long, castles long. And by the time you've achieved it, whether the knight has come out here or here, it might ask for the queen in a different square or something silly like h3 first. Yeah, right. Let's see if it hates it. It probably wants the queen to go here. Doesn't dislike it. Doesn't really have the depth. The variables are still huge here. But let's just say any move gets played, and the typical plan, as you see the number shoot up again, would be retreat to a4. So this, again, finally, is the maneuver that I'm trying to teach you, and the whole point of this video, for those of you that are here. This is going to be the maneuver you want to remember that saves it. I've had people just move here, right, and just hang that bishop plenty of times. It happens. So get this position, queen b5, queen a4, and then threaten to chop off this pawn, no matter where it is. Threaten to capture this if he doesn't think about it. And if he does capture back here first, make sure you haven't got better tactics before you just eat the bishop back, alright? But don't leave it there for too long and forget about it. Focus on your attack. You can get tunnel vision in this corner quite easily, and there are lines that might confuse you if you've missed them, and they're going to get far more complicated. The more deep you get into these sort of lines, the more complicated they can get, so you do need a creative mind. This is the furthest we've got in this particular game so far, alright? And it ends in a couple of moves. So, what would you think the most natural move for black is here? Like, what do they want to achieve? They still can't move this knight, can they? If they move this knight somewhere other than the obvious, you've got that wrong, you've got that and that still, yeah? The king is going to be forced into mate, and he's got nowhere to go if that knight doesn't land on the correct square, and we've still got the biz. This other rook's coming in. There's no way of defending this accurately enough, is there? Where, let's just say that they do. That's a move you probably are going to see, right? Queen takes knight. Don't get excited and throw a check in straight away. Queen takes knight. A lot of people will try and trade down here, won't they? Much better. So, there isn't really a practical way out of this mess for anyone. You're right, yeah. So, the NM decided to try and play bishop here to bring his other rook, which is a perfectly normal move. It's a perfectly natural human move to play. I'm trying to find a way to make it more interesting and show you a tricky line, but there really isn't. You've just got to not mess it up. And you will mess a few of these up, you will. But in this position, you need to find the correct idea. Again, the knight can't remove itself from the defense of this square. So, he resigned in this position. The NM resigned in this position quite simply because if the knight takes the rook, check and mate, and if the pawn takes the rook, naturally that's a free queen. So the complications of just trying to untangle his pieces after we've ripped this hole and completely dominate the king means that he never had any counterplay. He never got anything going. In the tactic where you can win the queen, even though the computer says this is better for white, black has a lot of counterplay. A lot of counterplay. And they're going to be pretty annoyed because they've lost the queen. And we've all played someone who's down the queen. They can suddenly turn into Magnus, can't they? Or you can get a bit too excited and think that you're winning too much. But realistically, you're a piece down as well. Once you start trading down again, it's very easy to get into a game here where you're queen versus two rooks. And that would be effectively even then again, wouldn't it? So you need to know what you're doing. And you need to know that this position is only +4. And I cannot stress this enough. The computer sees so far into the future from this position because it's simple that the reason it's +4, the computer has already allowed for one of these pawns promoting. That's how deep it is, and that's why it's +4. Because at some point the A or the B pawn does